Well, so we have to do the discussions this morning, and it's good to have in the studio John Alexander Akon. He's the Ashanti Regional Minister Designate, but currently a Deputy Minister for Gender and Social Protection.
Gender, Children and Social Protection.
Gender, Children and Social Protection.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay. When will you be vetted?
8th of February, yes. Earlier it was 10th, now it's 8th.
Because by Friday we'll be hitting on the 5th. So it means that 6, 7, 8, on Monday.
On Monday.
Monday, Tuesday,
yeah.
Okay. We'll see how that goes for you. But foremostly, topical today is that we have 15% increment in commercial transport fares. But what do you make of Ivor Greenstreet's election as the flag bearer of the CPP?
Well, Roland, thank you very much, and let me say good morning to your viewers and listeners.
Have we met this year?
We have.
Okay.
We have. You would actually realize that Ivor has been in the news for quite some time now in various capacities in the CPP. I mean, to the extent that you remember the issue about the NDC Congress in Kumasi, the comments he made and the backlash after. So he's been in the news, and as a general secretary, he's played his part very well. So contesting for the flag bearership was no news at all because it was rising, and clearly you could see that he was contending towards a cause if you had really followed his exploits. And for the matter that he was elected the general secretary, and I guess it had nothing absolutely to do with his handicap as a physically disabled person. And he's gone all over the country, I was told, to campaign for this position. So clearly when they were going, you realize that the contention was between Samia and Ivor. So on that basis, you wouldn't be surprised if any one of them won. But the margin gives cause for concern as to what really informed that position. Because talking about 500 and something to 1,000 and over. So the margin is quite surprising. And that's why there are speculations coming, and Samia is also complaining. It could either be sour grapes or something else. But I think that if it were...
It should be, or it should not.
It can be, but...
In our part of the world, losers are always raising concerns.
But then,
whether at the political, at the national level, or...
But again, I heard one of the vice chairpersons, woman organizer, Hajia, talking about that Ivor has to move, and that has always been the problem, towards the losers. Because I think some of them are not happy. Not that they lost in this particular situation, but what they have realized. So he has a little job, some job to do immediately.
Ideally, let's say you won an election, how would he go and do the approach? Well, especially when we know that this very animosity has been created following these accusations by a leading contender before the election, Samia Nkrumah.
Well, unfortunately, know that they say uneasy lies the head, not wears the crown. So if you are wearing the crown, it becomes a responsibility. You were just discussing something may happen in this country, and John Mahama's name will appear just because he's the president. So if you wear the hat, it becomes a big thing for you. And all of us, I mean, even your age, your status gives you a level of behavior expected by society. I mean, when you get slapped by somebody who doesn't like you outside, and you decide to reply, Raymond, people will come down. Why did Raymond behave that way and not the misbehavior of the other person because of the way they perceive you to be? So you are forced by those circumstances, societal expectation, to behave in a particular way. And that is how it's expected of him. He has to close those gaps very importantly. If you are people like Professor Akosa having a complaint of two, it's a stalwart who didn't leave the party for anything. He has to mend a lot of few fences before moving along. But to me, it's a good thing for this country. It shows the level. I mean, if the president could appoint a visually impaired as a minister, and Ivor has also won, that in itself is a victory to be the flag bearer. For Ghana, in that space, I think we are doing very well. And I think it's the context of United Nations trying to talk issues about vulnerability and creating the human dignity to the extent that everybody should be respected. And that's why I feel that Ivor should be looked at in his own elements and not in any physical disability. I don't think he won by physical disability. He won by his own performance. And that's what we should use in judging.
It was through a very unfortunate incident that led him to become physically challenged. He was a lawyer and had just had a motor accident. actually in our country.
Yes.
So it's not as if that he was.
It still wouldn't even matter.
Yes, I don't think he should be a subject.
At all. We should not dwell there at all.
But he's been in the game, so he should know that it comes with some backlashes.
Yeah,
when we get to the heat of the electioneering, I mean.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Now let's talk about this. A predictable increase in transport fares has been approved by the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council, the GRTCC. It is a 15% increment effective today. The increment is the beginning of an effect. I have here, a domino effect of the fuel prices went up in January by some 28%. It also means that the fares have to be adjusted.
Yes, if you follow Roland, there's a comment about NPA saying that they have been so changed by the Ghana Road Transport Union to the effect that I think there were a lot of discussions. You know, Roland, the negotiation for transport increase, I think so far they've been cooperative. So if you said the expectation, it is true. We're all expecting an increase. Quantum was what we could not believe in. I remember last week there were speculations of about 25-35%. And I think the speculation may have fueled the final decision because the expectation went too high. And I was just thinking in my head, for what reason would you do a 25% increase? On what basis? But eventually people will say that, oh, they have even done 15%. But Roland, you know, in transport fares increase, the negotiating table, what are the fighters which decides the direction? And it's very simple. And I keep saying it. If you have Ghana, most of them are, except the highway vehicles, most of them are 15-seaters and 23-seaters. Now, if you spread the cost of 15% on the average of 20 passengers, what does it mean for the driver? It implies that the cumulative effect of the increase will be high. And therefore, the margin, the profit is all going to the car owner or the driver. So I think that when you take numbers, we should not be jumping to 15%. People are anticipating that it will be fair to do a 10%. Because people will say...
Or even just a little less than that.
A little less than that. Because if you should get passengers...
Because I've always been thinking about it.
And run up and down.
Yes.
So it is...
But the argument when we talked to... Is it the chairman of the GPRTU the last week or so, was that they hadn't done increments marginally for a couple of months.
I always have a problem with that level of argument.
And then they also argued that it's not only the fuel that drives transport fares.
It has always been the reason they give. Is that not true?
Well, there are spare parts, there are other complementary issues.
So immediately you are going to buy a spare part. It is not the issue. The issue is that if nothing happens, you don't say, I've not increased for a long time and therefore I should increase.
Well, that's true. They haven't increased for a long time.
Is it
we have to be realistic.
Yes, but is it compulsory to increase? Unless there are overriding factors which will influence an increase.
You don't think the current scenario in which there means some 28% increment in fuel
that is wonderful. So
or other petroleum product prices.
So the current scenario.
You don't think that warrants any jump in the price?
So it's the current scenario, not because I've not increased for a long time. It's the scenario that should determine the increase. And I think I agree with the idea that there should be an increase. But I think that the cumulative effect is high. We could have gone below 10% or respectively. There's even a marginal decrease in the cost of fuel now. And they thought they were going to factor that one in. Unfortunately, immediately thereafter. I also agree very strongly that for some time now, what we're doing is that they were doing discussions at the Ghana Road Transport Coordinating Council, and when they finish, they start publishing the prices to prepare the minds of the people. You don't just slap it on Monday morning on the people. It becomes too bad because what you are also fighting for, you don't inflict, is to suit the pain by the way of application. And I think in this instance, it is not well because it was not announced prior to application. And therefore, it became a surprise this morning. I think we should consider human sensibilities and communicate for effect anytime we get into a new policy.
And for the MPA, also expressing some level of surprise. Well, why should they?
Well, you could realize that if you read the MPA, if you realize that...
They said they've been in talks with them and they hadn't...
And for all you know, they were part of a decision not to increase higher and therefore let's go down on the cost. And marginally they've gone down on the cost. Immediately they do that, you also increase. So it's a double gain if you look at it. Because immediately you go to the pump, you're going to... And again, even the pump in your case is also going to be cumulative. Any person, any 10 pesos gained is huge for them. depending on quantity of fuel you use. So you get that as an advantage, and you get the 15%. Maybe if you add on it, you are going to 20%. I cannot tell. But that is where the MPA feel that they've not been treated well. And I think it's important they consider all these issues when they are doing some of these things. It is not fair.
We'll see how they go. But considering the fact that as far as fares are, if they are increased, they have tend to have some ripple effect on other sectors. Then we should be a lot more worried. Did government think through all this?
Government did. I mean, Roland, the point is very simple. You want to solve a problem created by Ghanaians.
We create a problem?
Yes. I mean, you want to satisfy your people. And therefore, let's do subsidies. Let's not take realistic rates. Let's subsidize. Meanwhile, when you subsidize, what have you done? You are only accumulating debt. And therefore, all the entities concerned, VRA, Greco, and the ripple effect is with them. Because they're from the generation to distribution. So the ripple effect through transmission, Greco, is that if VRA suffers, the line will suffer. If ECG at the bottom end suffers, VRA will also suffer. So when we accumulate debt and we are not paying and it's attracting interest, we are also going to suffer one day. We take decisions, simple. We either hold the bull by the horns today and then just extrapolate and say that in 2 years, in a year, we should be over with the accumulated debts so that the banks can run, so that contractors can be paid, so that VRA can be more effective, and therefore Greco and electricity, and then we go through the process. So I would like the press to ask realistically, when are we going to get out if we should agree on these terms? And I'm sure in less than 2 years, Ghana should be better off. No pressure on any government to come. And I think we should be bold enough to accept that this is what we have done. We have to change it. The other point, Roland, is the fact that, remember, as a country, there's the likelihood, we should not be thinking that the fuel price is going to be down all the while. It may go up some time to come. How do we assuage the pain that will come thereof? We should take this opportunity to solve that one so that when it comes, we would have cushioned ourselves towards a further increase. And that's why this one's supposed to solve. And that's why we all need to agree to get the solution today before we get to cross that bridge.
So, in effect, you're saying government is taking a risk or has taken a risk.
Exactly. If a president in an election
imposing
year,
all these taxes.
yes, in an election year would do that, then immediately, even without going to the details, you know that no, there should be something very important the president wants to do.
That's politics.
Maybe.
Well, you have a way of going around it.
Well, but nobody will risk political fortunes in the election year.
Well,
and that has
true,
been,
though.
expediency has also been our problem. So if you want
true,
to hold it in election year, then you are sending a message, and we should receive it as such.
So far, since, because you communicate for government very often, so I'm sure you're on the various social media platforms that you have as a party. What have been your assessment of how Ghanaians have been taking all these, ultimately culminating today in new or incrementing in commercial transport fares?
Generally, I see Ghanaians are accepting the fact that they are in difficulties. And they are suffering as a result of the increases. And I see that particular. But I also see, much as it is difficult, I see an appreciable appreciation of the situation.
Meaning what, that the reaction has been mixed?
Yes, it is quite mixed. There are those who also talk about the suffering, but they have a feeling that it will get better. Their only concern, very strongly, is the fact that the hardship being inflicted is for our good. And therefore, there's a mixed feeling, and Ghanaians have an appreciation. And I think time and life should help us to do that, that we're going to get out in 2 years. We're going to get out in 1 year, all things being equal. So it's a mixed situation, and it shows the level we have traveled as a country in terms of our appreciation of issues when you come clear with the Ghanaian public. Otherwise, ordinarily, you would have realized a big backlash. But then it's an appreciable situation they are seeing. As to whether it will take us out is what we need to continuously assure the Ghanaian.
And so you're saying by a year or two we should be out?
That is why I want the calculation to come. Let's go to MPA, let's get government, let's get the press to talk.
Okay.
That looking at this,
So
we know
you're
there
not
are depths.
speaking based on facts? You're
No, in terms of time. In terms of time. So that we offset against the additions we
That
made.
very 2% reduction by MPA on the fuel price, what was it meant to do?
You see, when you come to MPA, there are various advantages. But when you go to MPA, 2% reduction is huge in quantum.
Really?
Yes, 2%.
For the MPA?
For the MPA, it's huge. I mean, this is on a liter on a
But that's
gallon.
nothing really for the ordinary
On a liter
consumer.
on a Ghana. It's because we are not getting the calculation right. And that's why they think that these people have contained themselves. But the point is that what revenue will be lost if you look at the opportunity cost? What revenue otherwise would be lost if they had not slapped the 2% reduction? It is huge in terms of fuel consumption. And if you look at the demand, inelastic demand for fuel, and you accumulate it over the whole country, you realize what we are losing. So that if it was going to be like that, why don't you take this money to solve some of our problems? So in fact, in terms of government revenue to MP, it's huge when you calculate it.
Very interesting point you make there. But now, finally, we're going to have commercial transport passengers making consistent complaints. But I remember you've been in the studio. You have also enumerated or outlined the need for the public transportation system to be well structured in such a way that perhaps futuristically these could help complement some of the difficulties that the ordinary will go through. Well, we know we have the MMT, etc.
Yes,
but what was the plan for it? Because we don't tend to hear.
I'm a firm believer in mass transportation.
No, I know what you believe in. You've said that before. But I'm saying that in government circles, what's the plan?
Rollout.
When is that? Is it going to be in your manifesto or what?
Obviously, it will be tight to roll out for mass transportation.
When is that?
The manifesto is almost completed.
No, it's not the manifesto. The rollout. When is it?
No, I actually would not know when immediately, but the rollout, that one for sure, it will come.
That has been a consistent failure of government, especially the NDC government that had said it's a socially democratic-led government, which has not been able to put some of these structures in place.
Yes.
But indiscriminately goes about increasing taxes on various segments of the economy that tend to affect the livelihoods of the ordinary Ghanaian.
Let me make a very nice example for you to hear.
Please do.
The two of us say state transport company, and then in your time, government buys about 100 buses brand new and says, Roland, you are the chief executive, the managing director. In your first 5 years of operation, no maintenance costs or low maintenance costs. Workers are happy because your overhead is very low. You give good bonuses. They say Roland is a very good managing director. In 5 years, you go on retirement, then you hand over the buses to me, and they start breaking down, and I get a bad name. Would you say I'm the creator or you are the creator?
Where is this scenario heading?
The scenario is saying that Ghana has accumulated debt over the period because of political expediency. It is there. It is killing Ghana. Everybody is adding. Do we continue to do that? This president has been bold in 3 fronts. The one is the doom saw. Let him hold the bull by the horns. Let him go, whether it's 3 years, and solve it forever. That's the bold decision. Because in my case, in 2006, 2007, I was working on the mine. 2 years, we were in it. Now let's go through the situation. This one is also suffering because we have accumulated debt. Let's take the right decision and get out of it once and for all, never to come back, and then try to cushion the effect of future increases. So that is the way to go, Roland, in real terms. If not, we shall also be adding, and you know the net result. The net result is that we shall continue the blame games, continuous generic blame gaming all over the place. We will need to put a stop to it by taking the right and bold decisions.
Very interesting. Now, let's move the subject to a subject of, over the weekend, I think just yesterday, we had the MPP inaugurating what they call the first, or convening the first Nasara conference, so to speak. And they said they were the right party for the Zongo communities. And I think that your party also tried to ambush that by also inaugurating the Zongos for Mahama also. But let's, it's been identified that a lot more of the poor literacy levels have been recorded in many of such communities and beyond. Yeah. For all the things that the political electioneering will present to us, what do you think the two parties really have to offer such communities, such minority communities?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. You also realize that NDC first took over the Zongo issue as a big issue. In Professor Morris, he even said that the Zongo will form the 11th region in contest. So it implies that what you analyze is what has been realized. Thank God later MPP came with Nasara, the realization is there. So it implies there's a big problem there. I think that for all of us, we need to approach the communities on the basis of education, very strong educational perspective. Now, you know that, again, there's also domino, ripple effect, education and poverty. You know it. And when you get to the north, much as there's an increase. I mean, I'm sure you know the case of J.J. Rawlings under his regime, where he was told that it was not possible to send power to the north. I'm sure you heard about that one. There are 2 areas the NDC did under Rawlings. He said it was told that it was not possible to get power to the north. It was told that it was not possible to get power to the Afram Plains. You know that particular one? And the effect is that Rawlings said it was possible. Not because it was technically inclined, but he thinks everything in this world was possible. The net effect is that he has to light up the whole of the Afram Plains through the river, the Lake Volta. And the same way, in the north, power was extended to Brighton and get jobs to go there. So an indication of what we want to do. The net effect is that it has changed the course of the northern development and practically get more people to come into education. But it's not enough. To me, as a person who works with social protection, I think we need to do more on the social front. Now, if basic education is free, there shouldn't be a reason why somebody should not go. Why is the person not going? We need to approach it from a different angle. And therefore, we should get education to move into the social context. And that is why under our regime, we've now done what is called the social protection policy, which will attack at a preventive level the case of the minorities within the communities. And that approach will make sure that those who are there and are not going are saved that situation from within the same communities. And you know the Hoches camp, we had to get the committee of reintegration to work. And now we've closed one. Second one in process, discussion going on, community sensitization. We'll go through that particular issue. And we're using the chiefs, we are using the imams, we are using the landowners, the tindanes to go through the process. And that is to bring an appreciable level of understanding of the social setup so that people can move from one stage to the other. So a lot of things are being done. In the LEAP expansion, which is going to 200,000, a lot of them, including what is called the LEAP 1,000, targeting the first 3 years of the life of any child from conception to the first 2 years after birth. We are now approaching to prevent stunting and make sure there's a good brain root for you to learn. And that's an issue that is riding very high now. We are doing about 7,000 as I'm speaking now. Target is 10,000. So these are issues to bring those in the poorest area back to stage in the limelight.
But the truth is, the MPP having, as far as in their structure at the executive level, somebody who is responsible, or a group of officials who are responsible for communities like the Zongos, tends to put their issues at the front burner.
No, NDC has a Zongo caucus as a
we
wing.
We do understand that you do get a lot of votes from...
No, NDC has a Zongo caucus as a wing with a national chairman, regional chairman, and a consortium chairman. So it's a complete wing of the NDC as a Zongo caucus.
So you're saying they're just complementing what you already do?
Exactly what we have always been leading to do. NDC is a complete caucus, it's a complete wing of the party. And for so long, that's why it's what's happening. So every constituency has a caucus executives who also operate as such.
At what point do we have to say the two parties are not just taking advantage of such communities to rake in a lot more votes, or to try to get those votes to sway whatever decisions that will be made by the entire
Roland, I agree, but unless we say that in trying to compare the South and the North, there's no disparity, even when we come to the Southern sector and the minority groups. Unless we want to say that, fine. But I don't think it is not it is the reality of the situation. And it is not just capitalizing. We should consciously make effort to work, and not even the two parties alone. Every party should make sure. And you know the social protection category is to close the inequality gap between any vulnerable group and those who have it. So continuously, policies should be geared towards vulnerability, inequality, disability, children, women, and get equality may be difficult in the context of time, but equity is possible. And that is why if you look at the NDC, if, for example, Roland, if you say that you want to build one model school in every district, and then you have Accra as a region, Kumasi as a region, and you do 1-1-1, have you closed the gap? One across, you haven't closed any gap. If you do 10, 3, 5, 2, depending on
that's influential, you say?
Yes. And then you try to close the gap. And that's why the accessibility of secondary schools came very, very strongly. That we have to close that gap and make sure it is closer to the people and they can attend, and then you increase the number who should be educated from the less deprived areas. And that is the social democracy.
It still doesn't take away the fact that the economy will be a thrust of the campaign messages of many of the parties, because of how government has managed the economy over the last 3 years.
Not at all. It will always be. Your international relations will always be. Economy will always be. Social setup will always be.
It's just
intervention. It's one part of it. But circumstances It's not what measures it is what decision you are taking to get people out of that situation is what matters. What may have informed a decision is what matters. So we explain the circumstances of today and what risk a government need to take, because what we have been discussing was that governments are not bold. What we are discussing that governments do politically expedient policies. What we are discussing is that people do not want to hold the bull by the horns. And this president of his huge experience say, let's go to it for once. Let's deregulate and get the market to operate. But let's cushion by imposing some few taxes. Let's go the full haul so that we shall not come back to it and come to do toll recovery levy. We are paying commercial bank is dying. Let's get around the problem. So economy, yes, but it will be explained based on the need and the circumstances we have found ourselves with our collective doing. So it will be explained. The economy should come, and we'll go through there.
We'll see how that goes.
Okay.
But we just showed a story today, which is giving an indication the government is seeking the support of the World Bank to develop what it calls the Coastal Transformation Program in this year. And we know that your minister, Nanya Oyelitha, says government is pursuing the program to bring some relief, especially to the coastal communities. And she was in the central region.
Yeah, Nana will address this particular. She's driving this particular agenda. Happy birthday, Nana Oyelitha.
Today is a birthday.
Last week, Saturday, she celebrated a birthday.
Okay.
Very nice.
Were you at the party?
I was there. I did some good few steps. Very
I
nice
see.
steps with her and her friends, Wiggy and other people. It was quite good. A lot of people were there. But she's driving this particular agenda on the social protection agenda. So she'll be talking on it in the very recent time. Joy called me and said, no, this has been driven by the minister. So hang on it. She will address that one very strongly. So hold on. She'll be talking on this particular one.
Okay.
But we are very concerned about those developments.
So you're saying it's a baby?
Yes, it's a baby.
Okay.
It's a baby.
And we'll see a lot more relief in communities?
You will see, yeah, exactly so. Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you know what's happening? Let me just tell you one small thing. If you go to Tama, Newtown, if you get to maybe Obuasi, mining communities, now the requirement by law for any such entity to operate is environmental impact assessment. You know what? And that's what you submit to UPA, and then the license after everything will be given. But we are saying that what is also more important is social impact assessment. If you are building a Tamahabo and you are bringing resources inside, it's going to promote truancy. It's going to promote prostitution. So what are we doing to assuage that effect from happening? We don't address that. And that's why we see the offset of social development. I mean, if you go to many areas, we are talking about children. What social impact assessment did we do? And that's why our social welfare is now called Social Development Department, because we want to reorientate them for issues of today, so that social issues will be taken very, very strongly. And that's how we have to change the Child, amend the Child Act, Children's Act, and come to child and family welfare policy, where community participation will be very huge in influencing the growth of the child. So these are things of social impact we are working very strongly on to make sure Ghanaians become very strong socially. Because the aftermath of every policy, every huge project, you are happy. Oil, you are happy. But then the fishermen were losing. Don't come closer here. What has happened to them socially? We need to work on that. So social impact assessment, very huge, and we need to pursue that.
So that would ensure that the welfare system in our country is at least brought to a certain phase.
Level.
Okay.
A level.
Anti-corruption crusader, Sydney Casey-Lever, you know him?
Oh, I thought he was a politician. He's a crusader. Okay.
Has asked the Attorney General to boldly prosecute persons indicted in various corruption scandals instead of counseling government when it's actually the AG's job to get things done. And we know that over the weekend on News File, some judge said that some debts had been paid by some of those firms that had been indicted in various embezzlement or the JIDA scandal, for example. So it's just in lieu of all this.
There's a nice friend of mine called Roland in Tama, so I find you very comfortable. He's a very nice person. But let me come to the point, Roland. You know about plea bargain, particularly in the American system.
Yes.
They say that Roland has committed an offense, but the offense has an effect on the larger society. When I build enough evidence on you, come give evidence and I'll give you reprieve. Now, even in Ghana, when you owe somebody and it goes to court, it takes quite some time. What they seek to do is to ensure that you don't lose the money at the expense of incarceration. So the approach is that, what do we do? If it's possible to take the money, we should take the money and they will know what to do. So it's important to use means which already exist in the system. And after all, apart from court, the ADR system also talks about some of these interventions. So if Ghana will be the winner, they will have to go that particular way of doing it. Our approach may be different, but I think if it is money and I owe you, the court will ensure that they say, gives your terms of payment. At times, you may not like it, but I say every month I'll give you so much. They will save the money for you instead of going straight and then putting people behind bars. So let's go for the money for a start, and I think it will be a way out.
But is it the right way to always make sure that we tend to retrieve? Because as far as we're concerned, we have the necessary laws and regulations that would ensure that the Attorney General can go forthwith to some of these firms or individuals who have said to have done wrong or embezzled money that belongs to the state, and make sure that we retrieve those monies for the state's coffers.
Roland, there's something called causation model in risk management, causes, and it has two sides. The first side is the preventive side, and the return side is the reactive side. If it should happen, what should you do? So what informs laws and policies? Issues as they come, you look at laws and look at it whether something may have happened. I mean, if you do a traffic system and people are flouting and you are taking charges and you are happy that you are getting out of money, you have a problem. You should rather be looking at what is causing people to flout that order. Maybe something is wrong. So immediately you get to that point, you look at what laws we have, and then you put in system to prevent it occurring at all. But having happened, what are the rules available, particularly when it involves money? We can go ahead and put them in harbors. People will be happy. And then you ask yourself, as your law exists, if somebody embezzles, what is the maximum sentence? Some could be just 10 years. Other could be 5, 4 or something. Then people will be comfortable going to do 4 years and come and chop their money. So we think that the option is to take and look at the loss so that you prevent it on the other side and reduce the risk of people doing that particular situation. So under these circumstances, I think we should put our heads together and make sure we can retrieve monies. And that is what I support, Roland.
Okay, so at least you will say the government is making sure that it retrieves those money.
Yes, yes. And then you look at the other side.
Even though investigative journalists like Manasseh Azuriawene would say that it's very debatable.
Well, it should be debatable. I mean, that's how the word moves. We should continue debating. Very well, informed sources. Let's continue to debate and find the best means. But I'm also of the stronger. Being debated, the moment somebody exploits, then you have to take action for prevention. And that's why I believe in the fact that the Judgment Debt Commission report should be well applied. And the safeguard that has been recommended should be done so that we save Ghana. President spoke about contending of all judgment debt issues and having been able to get a lot of victory in there. We should go to the recommendations so that those issues of judgment, they will be approached in a very good manner. What we have learned in this country is the fact that change of government should not necessarily change policies and contracts. It creates problems for us. So it's good to learn from the judgment debt report and take actions which will not put us in that state again and fight corruption. So I think we should go for the judgment debt and do the preventive side and put in measures to preempt anybody.
That very aspect about not abrogating contracts arbitrarily and things like that, you think we'll hit to it, especially in this?
We have to. We have no choice when the laws, global laws, are there looking at us. And therefore you can be saved today, but tomorrow they will come on you. And the laws are not within Ghana alone, within the global context. You do it tomorrow, somebody will go for it. Unfortunately for some people, when people go for it and they are coming, then they start getting interest and the payment is paid very fast. No. We should ensure that while there are laws, and laws goes out to international level anyway, some are in Hague, others are elsewhere. So unfortunately, you cannot even sit here and talk alone. And that's why, as a country, we should also be thinking globally at any point in time. You cannot do it and go away. You can go away, but you would have ended just suspending the course of action. And it's going to come one day. It's going to come one day. Don't run away from it. And that's why it's important that we don't run away. The law will catch you. It may not be today. It will be tomorrow. It may be during your time or my time, but somebody else will come and answer in future as the laws operate.
You mean my time as I'm not a politician?
Nobody knows tomorrow. That's why they say we don't ever say never.
Time tells.
Yes, exactly.
Time tells.
Exactly.
Time tells. All right, we have to put a wrap on our discussions, but what would you say to the ordinary Ghanaian who will be or who are boarding commercial transports this morning and from hence will be experiencing some of these difficulties before the prices are published and tend to stabilize?
Unfortunately, my fellow Ghanaians, things that should not happen to us has to be issues of shock. At times, not a quantum, but most occasions has to be the shock and the surprise that comes with when we are not fully prepared to take over. When you are prepared, you build an internal mechanism, which is very natural for you to face these realities. Unfortunately, this one has come as a shock, but Ghana remains our country. If you look at it, can they go back or not? I'm not sure they can go back. The best they can go back is to reduce the percentage increase. But then we should contend to the fact that the owners of the vehicles are also Ghanaians, and they need to operate profitably. I'm sad because of the way it has more or less been inflicted on a good Monday like this. But let's say this is our country. We need to support everybody to succeed. So let's show true faith. Let's support, let's condemn, but let's condemn very well and make sure that we all operate in a manner where nobody will lose, and Ghana and all of us will become winners. It's a shock, but create absorbers to absorb it, because tomorrow will be good for all of us. Wow. Thank you very much.
Nice delivery, as if you're the president of the republic. But talking about that, you'll be representing the president in the Ashanti region very soon.
Exactly.
That is if you are approved.
Approved, yeah.
Yes, and we know that according to what you're hearing, the 8th of February should be the time that you should appear before the appointment committee.
They will do 8th, 9th, and 10th.
What's a dream for the Ashanti region? Because we know that the turnover or the attrition rate of ministers at the top level, Ashanti region is very high. You just appointed as an educationist. And then you are going to take over.
Modern day leadership has 3 fronts. It has the leader, the follower, and the situation. You could be the best minister for maybe Brongafo or Northern region. You may not be the best for Ashanti region because the situation is very different and it's people. And if you know that Kumasi is more or less part of the center and it's a melting point for all manner of people with a very powerful royalty, then you know how to behave towards people. They are in the service class, and therefore they are people who move in the business, that have money, that have the resources, they put up big borders and things like that. People will need to be accorded respect and dignity, and that's what the Ashanti region wants. When people feel respected, they cooperate with you, and that's what I mean in the Ashanti region. And apart from the president's executive order for me to work, the important thing is that to what extent will I relate to those who are in the field? If you know Kumasi, there are those who have huge educational background, others don't have it, but they are high business people who also produce money and employ people. You need to give them the respect they deserve so that they return that as a favor. And that will be the trust of my approach to human beings. As for when you create that environment of respect, ideas will keep coming the way forward. And involvement of said people will be very critical in moving the place forward.
And you're also the candidate for the NDC, or will be the candidate for the NDC for the
Obuasi West constituency.
Okay. Do I say there's any relation to it, for which reason the president perhaps strategically wants you to become the head? Or
I actually don't think so.
Just dodge the question. I think that will help you. That's okay. John Alexander Korn is the Minister Designate for the Ashanti region. He will, on the 8th of February 2016, appear before the Appointments Committee of Parliament to be vetted. Currently, he's a deputy at the Gender, Children and Social Protection Ministry. Thanks for joining me this morning. It's a privilege. But that's where we end the show for the morning. As always, would want you to join us same time tomorrow. But right now...